Hey, here's news. The Republican nominee for Illinois' 3rd Congressional District is a literal Nazi. Now, before you say, oh, everyone's a Nazi these days just because they disagree with you, realize that this is pre-recorded. You know, I can't hear you. You're watching a YouTube video. Also, here's his website. And zoom into the part that says hate speech, question mark. Cool, cool, cool. Now just to the right of it where it says Holocaust, question mark. Beautiful. Now, although technically he was denounced by his party in the state, he also ran unopposed. So maybe they should have opposed him. And maybe the House Majority Leader, Paul Ryan, could comment on the fact that the House candidate for the majority party is a f***ing Nazi. Or not. You know, maybe he's busy thinking about how, reportedly, 10 years ago, he sold his shares in Wachovia and Citigroup on the same day he attended a private meeting about the looming banking crisis. So yeah, I guess don't mention the Nazi, Paul. Speaking of white supremacy, Tucker Carlson. Wait, let me explain. Tucker Carlson recently aired a segment about the shifting demographics in America.
A recent piece in National Geographic tells you a lot about demographics in America and about how bewilderingly fast they're changing without any real public debate on the subject.
Tucker, what do you mean by without public debate? Some Hispanic families want to move into your city, so you have a town hall meeting about it? Are you the racist town in Blazing Saddles? Are you a racist town? Sorry, continue.
In the year 2000, Hazleton's population was 2% Hispanic. Just 16 years later, Hazleton is majority Hispanic. That's a lot of change. People who grew up in Hazleton return to find out they can't communicate with the people who now live there.
Okay, so people return to Hazleton and can't communicate with people that live there now because Hispanics are the majority. But majority could be anywhere between 50.1% and 99.9%. And I thought it was weird how he didn't specify. But if I'm being honest, I didn't have time to find the National Geographic Tucker's talking about, but only because he didn't show the article or say what issue it was from. But I did find that the majority he's referring to is 52%. Okay, so Tucker, go on.
Now, before you start calling anyone bigoted, consider and be honest, how would you feel if that happened in your neighborhood? It doesn't matter how nice the immigrants are. They probably are nice. Most immigrants are nice. That's not the point.
Now, Tucker, you say don't rush to call you a bigot. You say most immigrants are nice, but you say that so you can say bigoted things. I'm not bigoted. I think most immigrants are nice. Except a simple web crawler search would discover your video from 2 months ago about how immigrants are more violent and commit more crimes than non-immigrants. It is 11 minutes longer than the segment where you say you're not bigoted and also most immigrants are nice. Anyway, in this other video, after first casually saying that Democrats need illegal immigrants here for votes, he claimed that Democrats are now saying this.
Illegal immigrants are terrific people, every single one of them, far more noble and law-abiding than you are. How dare you complain about their presence? You must be a bigot.
First of all, okay, Tucker. Second of all, what you're actually talking about is Democrats saying that Dreamers should stay because they're not criminals. It's literally a requirement of DACA. But, sorry, go on.
The one problem with this line of argument is that it's vulnerable to facts. We've got the data now, and it turns out, surprise, surprise, they've been lying to you.
Except then, Tucker, you give some statistics about Arizona, and again, you don't put anything on the screen of where that study came from. But it seems to be from a study by John Lott from the Conservative Crime Prevention Research Center, a study which has been called into question, a study that's only about Arizona, and a study that is notably an outlier. So, despite all of the evidence showing immigrants don't commit more crimes than non-immigrants, Tucker, sure, most immigrants aren't nice. Go on.
And that's just in one state.
Yeah, of course it's in just one state, because it's the only state mentioned in the only study you could find that would let you spend the next 10 minutes talking about how immigrants are criminals and diversity is bad. Oh, you have more. I'm sorry.
And that's just in one state. In California, an illegal alien named Luis Brasamontes.
Oh, it's just one dude? You're citing an outlier study that's methods have been called into question, and one dude from California? Cool, man. Real good. The point is, In your other video, when you say,
most immigrants are nice,
you don't really believe it, and you're only saying it so you sound less bigoty when you complain about immigrants. But sorry, that was my point. You're talking about this town's influx of Hispanic immigrants. What's your point?
most immigrants are nice. That's not the point. The point is, this is more change than human beings are designed to digest.
I'm sorry. What are you talking about, Tucker Carlson? More change than human beings are designed to digest? Where did you hear that? Who told you that? What are you talking about? We went to the moon. Shut up, Tucker. You think human beings aren't designed to handle change, or migration, or learning languages, or adapting to our environments, or meeting people? This is more change than human beings are designed to digest. You made that up, Tucker. You made it up. You fucking clod. Anyway, this concludes our one-time segment that we like to call, so I guess just maybe cool it on the white supremacist stuff, Tucker. Yes, that is what it is. And I did find the article, and I read it, and you definitely stopped reading after the 7th paragraph when they mentioned the demographic shift, Tucker. It's 66 paragraphs, Tucker, and you only read 7 of them. One of them later on reads, while the angst over the coming demographic shift might make for more uncomfortable race relations, it might finally usher in a reckoning in which America faces hard truths. The founding fathers built white dominance into the fabric and laws of the nation, and a country that proclaims to love freedom and liberty is still struggling with its roots in the original sin of slavery. Tucker. Didn't your show get canceled after a guest went on your show and just described your show to you? You'd think with all that spare time, you could have actually read past the 7th paragraph of the 66 paragraph article, which I know you didn't do because in your clip, you mentioned how people returning to Hazleton can't communicate with people when they return. Except the only mention of people returning to Hazleton is in the 3rd paragraph, where a woman talks about a yearly festival and how lately she doesn't want to go because she feels like a minority. And sorry to say, Tucker, the only mentions of communication in the article were past where you read in the 53rd paragraph where a bartender talks about warming up to learning Spanish, and in the 14th paragraph about how in 2010 Hazleton's mayor at the time tried to pass an anti-immigration law that also would have made English the official language of the town, but it didn't pass because it violated US law. Also, that guy's a congressman now. Tucker, you f***ing craven dunce. Please have a guest on your show describe your show to you again. Anyway, this concludes that segment called That. Hey Tucker, another recent piece in National Geographic? Why do we see so many things as us versus them? And the article you referenced talked a lot about how, just as historically Anglo-Saxons were seen as true American compared to Irish, Greek, or Jewish immigrants, white Americans are seen as more American than others. Let's say a person started sending bombs to prominent black residents of a city. Let's call it Austin. And let's say the White House is maybe worried that the bomber is white. The White House might say it's not terrorism. And then when it does turn out they're a 23-year-old white fellow, newspapers will describe him as no angel. Sorry, that's Michael Brown. Newspapers will report that he was once suspended for marijuana. Sorry, that's Trayvon Martin. Newspapers will report that he was a quiet, nerdy young man from a tight-knit, godly family who bombed prominent black families and killed people to death, but isn't a terrorist. He just was frustrated with his life. So he sent bombs to people to kill them to death, because life is hard. This section needed more jokes. Anyway, here's more news. Instead of taking the time to cover the president's likely crimes, let's take a cue from every news network and check in with the president's sex life. Ugh. Wait, which president? Okay. Amidst claims of an affair with and hush money for adult film actress Stormy Daniels, at least 2 other former mistresses are trying to come forward with their stories. It's very salacious and very disgusting. But instead of talking about Trump's cabinet using taxpayer money for planes and tables and doors, or that the RNC is holding a 4-day event at the President's Hotel, or that 10 Democrats voted to continue U.S. involvement in the brutal war in Yemen, or how after 4 years of poisoned water, the courts are finally allowing residents of Flint to sue, or how the President's body man got fired from the White House for financial crimes, and then immediately got hired for the President's re-election campaign, instead of all that, dude, the Prez f***ed a woman a few times. A porn star, no less, which is, you know, who cares? And don't get me wrong, it's important for these women to have their stories heard if they want to tell them. But like, what do we think will happen? He cheated on his wife many times, so he'll be impeached? He didn't, like, describe his crimes to her. The most we'll find out is that they had some embarrassing sex and his dick is covered in tree bark. We don't need Wolf Blitzer reporting on Stormy Daniels dunking on assholes on Twitter.
There's lots of breaking news right now, including a tweet that just came in from Stormy Daniels, the former porn star.
Barking up the wrong tree, Wolf. And like, if you're going to talk about Trump's sex life, gross, but at least contextualize it, and also mention, say, that his ex-wife, Ivana, swore under oath that during their marriage, the president got painful hair plug surgery from a doctor his wife recommended. So he, the president, grabbed her, his ex-wife, and pulled out her hair, and then violently forced himself on her. And Hey News mentioned that after receiving a settlement in the divorce, Ivana did retract the R word, but not the actual account of her husband, the president, getting mad about a doctor she recommended, so he pulled out her hair and violently forced himself on her. But sure, the affair thing, that'll do it. You know he also does crimes, right? Speaking of Donald Trump and women, Joe Biden spoke up about Trump's behavior, saying that he beat him up for it. A guy who ended up becoming our national leader said, "I can grab a woman anywhere and she likes it." They asked me if I'd like to debate this gentleman, and I said no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. And I just want to say, thank you, Joe, for your retrospective bravery and your contemporary words, because Joe Biden doesn't inappropriately grab women and girls. A guy who ended up becoming our national leader said, "I can grab a woman anywhere and she likes it. I can grab a woman anywhere and she likes it. I can grab a woman anywhere and she likes it." Cool. Now, I don't want to equate this with some of the awful things Trump's been accused of, but this is how this guy acts in public with a camera around. So maybe don't run for president, Joe? Speaking of presidents, here's a news. The president called Vladimir Putin, and instead of maybe mentioning all those people he poisoned, Trump congratulated him on his election win, despite evidence of ballot stuffing and the words, "Do not congratulate," written in his briefing from his national security advisor. And while some on the right took the stance, well, he's not going to take orders from his advisors, he's going to think and decide for himself. That's the MAGA way. Others, like the White House, went the other way and said he just didn't read it. The actual MAGA way. But let's be fair, maybe he, behaves like a child and doesn't like being told what to do, even if it's good advice. But let's also be balanced. Barack Obama called Putin and congratulated him in 2012, and clearly these relationships and situations are the same, and nothing of note happened in between those events. And I'm sure there's an actual tweet from Trump reading something like, "How long did it take for Obama to call Hugo Chavez and congratulate him on his re-election? Who do you think Chavez supports in ours?" But none of that matters, because nothing matters. And when asked if the Russian election was free and fair, Sarah "the Bee" Sanders said, much like the Austin bomber isn't a terrorist, that we don't get to dictate how other countries operate. Do we have a clip of literally anyone in the room looking up the words United States and election meddling and history? Actually, no. Let's just ask former CIA Director James Woolsey.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably, but it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians.
We don't do that now, though. We don't mess around other people's elections, Jim.
Or audio of Hillary Clinton lamenting the Palestinian election and how we, quote, should have made sure that we did something to determine who was going to win. Or again, just ask history. But I think it's time to break away from the politics and talk some gossip in another steamy installment of The Husband of the President's Crush.
Hello, is it me you're looking for?
Here's some hot goss. The Saudi crown prince has bragged that Jared Kushner is in his pocket and told close confidants that during a trip to Riyadh last year, Kushner shared the names of specific Saudi royals who are disloyal to him. And I don't want to say that later, after Jared in the Saudi crown prince's pocket, Kushner told him of those in the royal family who opposed his succession, that the Saudi crown prince rounded them all up and tortured at least one of them. But those are all things that happened in that order. So, also, goss regarding Kush, the hubby of Prez's Kush. The Kushner family's real estate business falsified docs in NYC to harass rent-controlled tenants with disruptive construction, pushing them out and allowing buildings to be sold for greater profit. The company, of course, blamed it on a paperwork error, something Jared is very good at. Misleading paperwork error. You say tomato, you also say, good morning, warden. Let me tell you of my recent night in prison, where I live now. You're going to prison. Hey, remember when I said, Joe Biden, please don't run for president? You're super creepy with women. Well, speaking of don't run for president, please. Hey, Mark Zuckerberg, you gotta run for president, man. Please. I know I've said the opposite in the past, and I know you're going through a lot right now with Facebook being under fire for allowing data to be harvested by a third-party app and sold to a private firm called Cambridge Analytica, funded by the Mercer family and run by Steve Bannon to spread propaganda to get Donald Trump elected by, among other things, inventing the term Crooked Hillary. Aw, Donald, very disappointed in you. A firm caught on tape describing their propaganda and their plans and ability to extort politicians via Ukrainian prostitutes. But, Zuck, run for president. It'll be very funny for everybody but you. Now, in the interest of fairness, it should be pointed out that a lot of this reporting was done via a journalistic sting, a tactic used by James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, and winner of the Fake News Award from an old show I can't quite remember. And people have pointed out, well, you don't support O'Keefe, yet you think this Cambridge Analytica bust is so great. So real quick, I'm just gonna do an Alta Vista search for what's the difference between journalists uncovering a powerful, wealthy company's misdeeds and claims of extortion via accurate presentation, and say, selectively editing videos to misrepresent people's actions so they get fired, even though they did the right thing and called the cops about your encounter, or luring a journalist on a boat full of dildos and porn, or sending a false accuser to discredit women coming forward about an alleged child molester and Senate candidate, or trying to get contractors to spill dirt on their employers by making them think they were on job interviews for jobs that didn't exist or dates that weren't dates. Also, maybe don't compare journalism exposing a propaganda organization funded by billionaires with the dishonest bumbler funded by those same billionaires. And search. Dang, I spelled every word wrong. Oh well. But it is important to address these points when they're brought up, because, like I said, here at Cody's Shody, we like to be fair and balanced. So much so that we came up with that phrase, and it's ours. Trademark, copyright, registered trademark. So let's keep looking at both sides of this. For example, many on the right are saying, well, Barack Obama's campaign did something similar to Cambridge Analytica. So when Obama does it, it's okay, but now that it implicates Trump, it's not? And not exactly, but kind of, because they're not the same. These sites like the Daily Wire and Gateway Pundit point to a former Obama campaign staffer who describes how the campaign sucked the entire social network out and famously used data in their campaigns. And that's why the Obama campaign and Cambridge Analytica are the same and did the same thing. Take that, libs. Except people like Ben Shapiro and Julian Assange and Colin Gateway are being disingenuous, or disingenuous if you prefer, I know I do, because they all share the same video of Carol Davidson saying they sucked the entire social network out, and the Democrats still have that data. But they never seem to mention or show this part that happened literally seconds beforehand.
We got people to opt in.
Now, here she's referring to supporters of Barack Obama logging into Barack Obama's website with Facebook and opting in to share who their friends are. I'll let her continue.
The privacy policies at that time on Facebook, so they told us who all their friends were. This is very much how local campaigns work, right? People sit in a room, it's a really small thing, all of their biggest supporters sit around the table and they like circle the names of the people that they know and that they're gonna outreach to, and they figure out how to fill in the gaps of the people that they don't know. The Obama campaign just did this in a digital level, on a much larger level, but we were actually able to ingest the entire social network.
So, like local campaigns work, supporters of the candidate voluntarily let the campaign know who their friends were so they could make cold calls and knock on doors. Or they obtained tens of millions of users' data from a third-party app that had nothing to do with a political campaign and was then used for propaganda. But
it has to happen without anyone thinking that's propaganda.
I mean, sure, that's just describing an element of propaganda, but yes, these are different. The other thing these disingentlemen point to is a tweet from Davidson describing when Facebook found out. They went to the campaign and were very candid that they allowed them to do those things that they wouldn't have allowed someone else to do because they were on their side. As if it's an indictment of the Obama campaign instead of a clear indictment of Facebook, which we already know fucking sucks. But to Zuckerberg's credit, he did stay silent for a long while, and eventually posted about how all of Facebook is a community, and discussed features and changes that he tacitly admitted should have been implemented years ago. But it doesn't matter how much he says he's going to add, it doesn't change what Facebook is and does. We don't pay for Facebook, and it's not because Mark Zuckerberg's a good guy, it's because we're not the customers, we're the product. Zuckerberg's first project was FaceMash, and it had to be reviewed by his school's board because it violated students' privacy and copyright. This issue of privacy and violating rights is embedded in the foundation of Facebook and its creators' ideas. Remember when they made that one movie about him and he was the bad guy in it?
What?
Do you think I deserve your full attention?
I had to swear an oath before we began this deposition, and I don't want to perjure myself, so I have a legal obligation to say no.
His idea for Facebook was to create a platform where people talk about themselves so that he could cyberstalk a girl that didn't want to talk to him. He's worth $70 billion. The core of his original idea, cyberstalking, isn't changing, and maybe they'll stop some third-party apps from getting some of your data, but they're also adding facial recognition software, and they track you in ways that don't even have to do with the data you give them, and they're always going to be a company that wants to make money off of its product, which again is us. Versus them, a reference to that National Geographic article that Tucker Carlson didn't fucking read. The fucking dope. Episode over. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. Do the YouTube things like and subscribe and leave comments. And if you want more of these videos more often, make sure to support us on Patreon. The link is below. I love you.